Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of our Gored Dress tutorial. So on this part 2, I'll be showing you guys how I sketch and cut out the back piece and how I stitch the bodies together, and also the addition, the floral part. And again, this video, there won't be the sleeve tutorial there because I was not able to film it. So we're only doing the body on this video, right? So for the part 1, I'll put the link in the description box so you can go click on it so that it'll take you there directly, right? Like I said, it's my first time trying out shoulder darts, and then I made some mistakes and I'm trying to highlight them so that if you follow my video, you make that same mistake, right? Yes. So hi guys, my name is Fatima A. Yusuf, and on this platform I share sewing tutorials. It is something I like to learn. Let's get to it. So this is the other piece that I cut out and I folded it, right? For this particular one, you might need to add more than the one you added for the front piece. So you can mark maybe 10 to 15 before you cut. I already marked my 2 inches for my zip. I'll be marking my bust point, my waist, and my hip armhole. I'm not going to mark it on the bust in this case. This is what I have: armhole, my bust point, my waist, and then my hip. So that's what I marked out. I did for the front piece, just that the front piece had on the bust line, and in this case I'm not marking it. Please, before you watch this one, I think it's better you go watch the part 1 first. Yes, marking all those my points, right? I'll go ahead and mark my neckline. Again, I made another mistake. I marked 3 inches instead of 3.5 inches. For my front piece, I made it of 3.5. While when I'm stitching, I added that half inches back. For the depth, I made it of 2 inches, so I formed my round neckline, right? I'm going to go ahead and impute my shoulder divide by 2. After marking my shoulder divide by 2, after that, I'm going to find the midpoint like I did for the front piece, and I'm going to mark it. After marking the midpoint, what I have in that midpoint, right, I'm going to mark it after my initial shoulder divided by 2. So that's going to be the new armhole, right? I'm going to go ahead on my bust line or my chest line, and I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus additional half inches, so I have 4.5. And on my waistline, I'm going to mark 4, and on my hip line, I'm going to mark 4 inches, and at the down of my piece, I'm going to mark 4 inches. It's the same way we did for the front piece, right? To join the points together, the 3 points together. So what have we done so far? After folding, you mark your shoulder divided by 2, right? Mark your lines, your bust line, your waist line, your armhole line, your hip line. Mark out your neckline, right? And on my bust line, I marked my 4.5, on waist 4 inches, on my hip 4 inches, and I went ahead to join those points together like this, right? So that's what we did. Like I said in part 1, while making this gored dress, you must not do the shoulder dart stuff or princess dart. Actually, just cut your basic gown. Now join my 4.5 to meet midpoint of our shoulder like this, right? Also join the initial shoulder measurement to also meet that point. Same way we did for the front piece. We are meeting the point, right? Good. While cutting, I also made a mistake around that part. I didn't cut off that part, this midpoint and the initial shoulder. In our front piece I cut it out, but in this back piece I didn't cut it out. It was another mistake. The next thing to do is that on my waistline, I'll mark 1 inch by the left, 1 inch by the right under our 4 inches, the same way we did for the front piece, right? After doing that, I'll make sure I use a slant line to join those 1 inch to meet the bust line slantly. So in this case, we are not forming a curve. But before doing that, I entered to just form my armhole length. That's just draw a straight line. So after that, I decided to mark my armhole length, right? And I had to mark that initial shoulder divided by 2, which I feel like that was what made me not to even cut off that other parts that I was supposed to cut off. But all good, it's my first time, so definitely I get to learn more. I found my armhole length, right? But I wasn't supposed to do that. For the length, I'm supposed to use that I marked after our initial shoulder measurement. That was another mistake I made. And I joined those 1 inches to meet the bust line using a slant line. So in this back piece, we are not forming a curve because our back doesn't have a bust. So you're just forming a slant line, not a straight line, sorry. A slant line to meet. Then I'm just going to take that 1 inch on both left and right to meet the down part of our piece. The same way we did for the front piece while cutting the front, right? So that's what you're going to do. Just straight line downward. Like I said, I made a mistake around that armhole length. I was not supposed to mark that. I was supposed to mark the measurements I marked after the initial shoulder divided by 2. That was what I did. So after that, I went ahead to just create my armhole, your half-inch shoulder slope. Then you add your stitching allowance, half-inch, and then I'll form a curve. So for this one, I don't need to mark the midpoint and then extend it out by half-inch and then form the curve. No, this is the back piece. It's not supposed to be inward the way the front piece was inward. So that's what you need to know. So I'll just go ahead. That's my stitching allowance, 0.5 inch. I'll form my curve and we're done for the armhole part. Like I said, I'm supposed to mark that straight line on the what I marked outside that initial shoulder divided by 2. After doing that, I entered to impute my bust divided by 4, and I added my allowance, which is 2 inches, because I'm not removing that on the armhole line. On my bust line, I also imputed my bust divided by 4, same thing, plus 2 inches. Then I'll go over to the waistline, and on the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist divided by 4, then plus additional 2 inches for the darts that we are going to be cutting off. Then I'll add 2 more inches for my allowance, or 1.5. And like I said in the part 1, please, you need to add more allowance, much allowance, to be on the safer side. But I added 1 inch for mine. So on the hip, my hip divided by 4 plus additional 2 inches that I'm going to be taking off for the darts, and then I'll add my stitching allowance. That's what I did. And the down part, what I have on my hip, is what I'm going to take to the down part. So I formed my armhole curve, and I'll be joining those points together the same way I did for my front piece. So that's what I will just do. You join them together. Like I said, in case you want more allowance, so when cutting out your fabric, you should be able to know how much allowance you want to add before you cut out your fabric, before you fold it into 2. That's it. So I'll just join my points together. Now extend that to the down part and also mark the side of the body. So this is what I have, right? So on the waistline, I will extend it to that my 2 inches for my zip. I'm going to take 0.5 inch. I'll just join it with a slant line to meet my bust line and my hip line. So that's to take out your zipper bulging. So it's for you to remove zipper bulging. I would advise you do this because it actually works out so nice. I love the results of removing this bulge. It actually works out nice. After doing that, I'll just go ahead and cut my piece. I was supposed to cut out the darts right at the down part and also around the shoulder part. That's another mistake. I didn't cut out the darts around the shoulder side. You'll see when I'm cutting. So that was another mistake. But it didn't really affect the result much. What I would have done was add 0.5 inch to that our initial shoulder measurement so I can use it to stitch the darts together. I didn't do that, so this is it. So you just go out and cut out your piece, cut out the marked area. And after cutting, this is what we have, right? So this is the back piece. So the difference is that the front piece has a curve at the bust area while the back piece doesn't have it. So this is what I have. That's my back piece and that's my front piece. Very good. So now what I'm going to do is, and I already marked my 5 inches downward from the waist for both points. You see where I marked that 5 inches. That's where our additional floral fabric will start from. So that was why I marked all those points. So now I'll go ahead and just open up my front piece. So I firstly had to notch that 5 inches because that's where you're going to stop your stitching. So I'll just notch that 5 inches that I marked. So at the front, you'll be adding 2. At the back, you're adding 2 floral pattern. Then by the side, you're adding 1. So basically, you're adding 6 additions to the down part of the gown. I notched that part, right? Then I'm going to open up my piece and I'll go ahead and stitch them together. You open it up like this. So this is the middle. The midpoint is not slitted. This is the front piece. So this is what I have. The way I place it like this, that's where we are stitching it. So you are stitching it front face facing front face. Right? So you need to be sure of your back face and your front face, especially when using fabrics like crepe that you can sometimes you like differentiate back from front. So I'll just go ahead and stitch, and I'll stop my stitch at that at that 5 inches. I don't know why I keep saying 0.5. I'm going to stop my stitching at that 5 inch for both sides. So that's what I would do. So I'll just stitch by ½ inches. You carefully stitch, and while stitching, be mindful you're going to stop where you notch. That's 5 inches. That's where you're going to stop, as you can see here. So that's where I stopped. So I did that for the 2 sides, right? And after stitching, this is what we are left with. Good. So you see where the slit is now, that's where you're adding your addition to. So basically that's all. Then I'll just notch the down part of the bust area. That's that on the bust. I'll just notch the 2 sides, the on the bust part. I'll give it a small notch. Don't get to the stitch part to just give it a small notch. That's what I'll just do. Basically, you can just cut out your basic A-line gown or your normal straight gown. Then under your waist, you go down by 5 inch. Then you slit it. When you slit it, you have 2 slits at the back and the by the sides. 2 sides. Mark your 4 inches or your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Mark it and go down and just slit it. You are good to go. You don't need to do this, that, shoulder, that, bust, and princess bust, yeah. But in case you want, if you want, you can do it. I feel like that one is easier without doing all those that stuff. Same thing for the back piece, and I already attached my zipper. So I did same thing. I stopped at that my 5 inch. So I just gave it a good iron press, and this is the back piece. This is the front piece, sorry. And this is the back piece. This is my floral material that I'm going to be using. I have 4 yards of it. So I gave it fold. I folded it into 4 and I removed 1 part. So that's 1 yard off because I was trying to manage yard. Like I said in my part 1, you're supposed to have about 6 to 7 yards. Depends on how wide you want this addition to be. I felt like I also made a mistake here to tell you people when we get there. So after removing 1, so I had 3, right? 3 left. So and I gave it another 4. So basically I have 6 layers here. So I feel like the fabric was silky. Maybe that was what actually added to the mistake I made. So I had 6 layers, then I'll just place it correctly like this. Fabric on that orange color piece, I had to measure the length I have from that my 5 inch that I stopped stitching. So I measured the length. I'm going to mark out here and I'm going to cut that part. So I measured it and I just marked that point, what I got. And then I'm going to mark a straight line and cut off the excess. So the excess I had left was what I made use to make the sleeve part. It's like what I would have done was maybe deduct about 2 to 3 inches from the length I got because the fabric is silky. Oh, I didn't do that. One thing again I felt I would have done was maybe cut it into 2 piece or one piece instead of cutting all at once like this. So the wideness I had is 17.5. I'm using 2. So when I open up the addition, the wideness of my addition that I made use of in this case was 35 inches. And I feel like to get a fuller one, you'll be needing about 50. Even after folding, you should be having 25 as the width. I split the in-between slantly like this. Right? I feel like to get a better result, you should do this, like, don't do 6 fold. You can do just 2 fold. Cut out, then you do another fold, you understand? Instead of cutting all at once. And I drew that slant line, right? And then from the pointed edge, I'm going to just mark the length that I was looking for and round it to form a curve, just the way you do your normal circle cutting, your triangle cutting. That was what I did, and I marked the down part, the curve part for both sides. And then I'll just cut it off. Like I said, this was where I made the major mistakes. So I felt like I would have deducted a little bit from the original length that I got since my fabric is silky. I didn't do that, and I would have just cut this extension out separately, maybe about one pieces. I shouldn't have cut everything at once. I feel like that was the mistake I made. This one of the parts, when I was cutting the down parts, I didn't really cut it perfectly. So maybe that one is also what contributed to the mistake I made. So that was what I did. When you watch the video, you understand how to cut the flare. Please, when you're cutting out your own flare, don't do it all at once. That's my advice. You can do it 1 or 2. It will be better. When you cut out 1 first, you can check the length if it's going to be perfect. If it's not going to be fit, if it will be more than the original length you want, they get reduced. So that when you're cutting the rest, you cut them out. So you can see these are other parts, these down parts. I didn't cut out the down parts very well, but I just went ahead with it like that because I've already cut. So when I open it up, I'll be having 3 pieces, and then one of the pieces will be splitted, so I will need to join it. So this one that is inside that is falling right now is splitted, so I had to stitch it together. So that was what I did. that was how I cut out my cone shape or my flare shape or my addition for the gown. So that's it. Just join the one that is splitted, and then I'll go ahead to stitch it to my gown. So I'm going to show you guys how I stitched it, sorry, not splitted it. After stitching the flare to my gown and I was not able to get the result I was aiming at, I felt so bad, and then I just stopped filming. Initially I'd wanted to just delete all the clips, but then people keep asking for the tutorial, so I just decided to just post it for you guys and tell you guys how I made the mistake and how you should be careful not to make same way I made my mistake, right? So that's why this is the front piece, and this is, I'll bring one of the flare, and this is how you're stitching it front face facing front face. So now this is the front piece, and I'm going to place that our extension underneath it in such a way that you want the front piece of the floral pattern to show. So I turn it to the back piece, to the back face, not back piece, and I'll just add that what's it called, the floral pattern to it. So this way the back face will also be facing me, as well as the wrong face of the crepe or the orange fabric will be facing. So that's what I did. So in that way you have your front face facing front face. So you're starting your stitch from where you stop, but I took mine up to about 0.5 inch from that 5 inches. So I took it up a little bit and then I stitched. So you just watch carefully how I stitched it. So you just pick it after placing like this, right? So I'm just making sure that it's over that 5 inches, about 0.5. Then I'll just place it. See the way I'm picking it up. So I'll now stitch. So you have our front face facing front face. So you just stitch 0.5 inch. So that's what I did. So I did for the front, I added 2 fleas, right? And for the back piece too, I'll also add 2 fleas to it. And then that's it. Just stitching. I stitched from the middle point to the left, and then I came back to the midpoint and I stitched to the right. So that's how I stitched it, and I took it up 0.5 inch from that 5 inches. So that's what I did. So I did same thing for the back piece. I can see this is where I had extra, so I felt like I would have deducted 2 inches before cutting out the flare part, and I've gotten a better result. So this is for the back piece. Also added after stitching, I also add extra to it. So I went ahead to stitch them together. So firstly, what you do is place your back piece and your front piece together, front face facing front face, and then I'm going to stitch the shoulder by 1/2 inch, and also go ahead to stitch my sides with the allowance that I imputed, right? While stitching the side, I'm going to also stop at that 5 inches at the below the waist. So that's what I will do for the 2 sides. So you stitch there. Stitching the body, just go ahead and then stitch your floral pattern or your flare to it the same way we did for the back and front. You hem the down part and you're good to go. After stitching it, this was what I had. So you see my mistake, right? So I went ahead and trim off the excess before I hemmed. So that was what I did. Attached my sleeve, and guys, this was the final result. And you see it on me. So this is it on me. The thing was, it was not long, it was not flowy. I really love long gowns, so basically that was why I didn't really like the dress. Final result was awesome, and it was so cute, and you can see the back giving, right? So if this video has been helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, drop your comment, and I'll see you guys in another video.